In this video, you're going to learn about water meters and electric meters. Those are two ways that the water company and the electric company use to determine how much they're going to charge you each month for your usage. So the first thing you should know is that when reading meters, when they come out and read your meters, they don't reset them to zero. So the numbers just continue to get bigger and bigger. So when they figure out how much water or electricity you used, they have to compare the current reading with the previous reading that they took. So in this first example, we're going to look at that. Tom's October water bill listed 2 meter readings. The previous reading was 3,128 CCF, and the present reading is 3,141 CCF. How much water did Tom's household use during the billing period? So the first thing that you should know is that when we're talking CCF, we're talking a unit measure that represents 100 cubic feet. And if you think back to what you learned in some of your past math classes, when we're talking something that's cubic, we're talking volume. And that makes sense with water because water is not two-dimensional. It is an area of, three-dimensional area holding the water. So when you think about this, you have to think, well, I want to compare the present reading with the previous reading. So that means I need to find out what the difference is. And your present reading should always be bigger than the previous reading. So that means you want to take your present reading minus your previous reading to get the amount of water that was used during that billing cycle. So in this case, the present reading we said was 3,141. The previous reading was 3,128 CCF. So when we take and subtract those two numbers, we end up with 13. And you need to remember to also include the unit of measure. So they used 13 CCF of water. In the second example, these meters are what they look at to read your water and your electricity. And if you look at the dials, you will notice that every other dial, the numbers go in a different direction. But that doesn't matter. What matters is you have to understand how to read the meter. So when you read each dial, you have to use the lower of the two numbers closest to the arrow. So for example, the first dial on the left, the arrow is in between 1 and 0. So that means that that first number is going to be 0. Okay, the second dial, the number's in between 9 and 0. And that leads us to an exception. Okay, so the exception is when the arrow is between 9 and 0, you always use 9. 0 represents 10 in this case. So if you think about it, if we're going around the dial, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that means if 0 represents 10 in this case, 9 is actually the lower number, so 9 is what it would be. In the second and the third dial, the arrow's in between 5 and 6, so the number is 5. In the fourth dial, the arrow's in between 5 and 6 again, so it is once again 5. And in the last dial, the number is in between 2 and 1, so that means we're going to use the 1. Now, when we write this out, we write this out as if we would just write them all together in order of how they are. And if you think about our number system, we know we put a comma after the third digit. So if there's a 0, the 0 does nothing. It doesn't add anything. So we would actually write this particular number as 9,551. We have to remember our unit of measure. Now, in this case, we're talking electric. And electric is measured in kilowatt hours. So we use the kWh to represent kilowatt hours. I'm going to do one more example with the dials. So I pause the video right now and see if you can figure out the numbers that this dial reading is at. And keep in mind, this one is CCF, so that means what kind of utility are we doing? Well, we know CCF is used for, we know it's used for water. Okay? If we look at our dial, the arrow's between 3 and 4, so we go with the 3. It's in between 3 and 4 again, we go with the 3. It's in between 5 and 6, so we go with 5. And the last one's between 9 and 0. And remember, if the arrow's in between 9 and 0, the 0 actually represents 10. So that means we would go with the number 9. So 3359 would be our number. And we would add it with put our unit of measure afterwards. So that means the meter reading for this time is 3,359 CCF.